Fish can serve as either a power food or an inflammatory, toxic nightmare for your body, all depending on what fish you choose. That's why it's so important to pay attention to and avoid the fish you should never eat. Here at Healthier Everyday, we provide you with the best tips to improve your health and overall well-being. It's incredibly important to get ample omega-3 fatty acids, and certain fish can serve as potent sources. But due to issues like mining, sewage and fossil fuel emissions, heavy metals like mercury are winding up in the water and building up in our fish. Unfortunately, low-level mercury poisoning from contaminated seafood is a real threat and can lead to devastating effects on health. Let's see the top 15 fish types that you should never eat. Number 1. Tilapia. Did you know that in some regards, eating tilapia is worse than eating bacon? In fact, the shift to eating more farmed fish like tilapia is leading to highly inflammatory diets, according to a 2008 study published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association. Wake Forest University School of Medicine researchers say tilapia is one of the most widely consumed fish in America. The problem with that? It contains very low levels of beneficial omega-3 fatty acids and, perhaps worse, very high levels of inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. Sustaining high levels of inflammation in the body can worsen symptoms of autoimmune disorders and may be linked to chronic conditions like heart disease, cancer and diabetes. If you must eat this fish, avoid tilapia from China, where farming practices are particularly worrisome. Better sources are the US, Canada, the Netherlands, Ecuador and Peru. Of course, wild-caught tilapia is preferable to farmed fish, but it is very hard to find. Number 2. Atlantic cod. Historically, Atlantic cod is a species proven to be vitally important to feeding the New World civilization and early colonization of the Caribbean Sea. But the heavy fishing over the last 1,000 years has taken its toll. In the late 1990s, catastrophe struck. The fishery collapsed. Although the female cod releases more than 100 million of eggs, only a few are able to survive to adulthood. According to ASENA, scientists agree that North Atlantic food webs have fundamentally changed as a result of the Atlantic cod collapse, and the species is currently considered vulnerable to extinction. If you're a fan of cod liver oil, make sure it's not sourced from Atlantic cod. Instead, opt for Alaskan cod caught with a longline, pot or jig. Number 3. Atlantic flatfish. Due to historical overfishing and high contamination levels, these flatfish species have secured their slot on the list of fish you should never eat. In 2014, ASENA, the largest ocean conservation group in the world, conducted an investigation using data from the National Marine Fisheries Service. It identified the 9 worst fisheries in the US based on wasted bycatch. They found that commercial fishermen in the US throw about 2 billion pounds of bycatch overboard each year. That's equivalent to about 500 million seafood meals. The California gillnet fishery that targets halibut was identified as one of the worst. According to the report, if you've eaten US halibut, there's a good chance it came from this damaging fishery. Number 4. Caviar. Beluga sturgeon are ancient fish that are highly sought for their fish eggs, aka caviar. In fact, this fish grows to be very large, can live to be 100 years old, and can carry several hundred pounds of caviar, which can be worth up to $3,500 a pound. Number 5. Chilean Sea Bass. Actually named the Patagonia toothfish, seafood distributors started marketing this deep-sea predator fish as Chilean Sea Bass because it sounded less intimidating. It worked. Now common on menus around the US, Chilean sea bass overfishing has left this species in serious trouble. Aside from overfishing, its high mercury levels are also problematic. Furthermore, harvesting the fish from Chile is also plagued by poor management and bycatch problems. Number 6. Eel. Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch places eel on the avoid list on its sushi guide because it's slow to mature and has been overfished in many parts of the world, bringing some populations to collapse. This is leaving even Asian countries looking to American eels, which are threatened among US populations, too. That's a problem because eels are incredibly important when it comes to protecting our water supplies. In the Delaware River, for instance, eels are an integral part of spreading mussel populations that serve as natural water filters. Aside from the issues with overfishing, eels tend to readily absorb and store harmful chemicals and contaminants, such as polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and flame retardants. In certain states like New Jersey, river eels are so contaminated even adults are advised to eat no more than 1 eel a year. Number 7. Farmed salmon. Americans consume a lot of salmon. Unfortunately, the majority is the unhealthiest kind. In fact, most salmon marketed as Atlantic salmon is farmed, meaning that fish are raised in conditions often ridden with pesticides, feces, bacteria and parasites. What's more, studies show that farmed salmon is more likely to contain harmful contaminants like PCBs, which are pollutants linked to insulin resistance, obesity, cancer and stroke. They're also often treated with antibiotics and tend to be higher in inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. For a better alternative, skip the Atlantic salmon and opt for wild-caught Alaskan salmon instead. Number 8. Imported catfish. Although these fish are popping up as trendy new menu items all over the United States, what you're likely getting is a fish called Pangasius or swordfish, a much cheaper alternative that wholesales for around $2 per pound. A 2016 study found 70–80% of Pangasius samples were contaminated by Vibrio bacteria, the microbes behind most cases of shellfish poisoning. Additionally, aside from destroying important river life and wetlands, this fish factory farming method results in fish swimming in waste and sludge. They're also commonly treated with a broad range of antibiotics, in addition to pesticides and disinfectants. If you see swai, basa, striped catfish or any type of imported catfish on the menu, run. And take it as a sign that the restaurant isn't taking seafood safety or sustainability seriously. Number 9. Imported farmed shrimp. Is shrimp good for you? When it comes to farmed shrimp, which accounts for about 90% of the shrimp we consume, the answer is a resounding no. In 2009, Italian researchers discovered that 4-hexylresorcinol, a food additive used to prevent discoloration in shrimp that could reduce sperm count in men and increase breast cancer risk in women. Not only that, but all but one of the pesticides used globally in shrimp production are banned for use in U.S. shrimp farms. Shrimp farm ponds are also treated with harmful chemicals and pesticides, such as malachite green, rotentin and organotin compounds, all of which can have detrimental effects on health. Number 10. Orange roughy. One of the longest living marine fish species, orange roughy can live to be 150 years old. Generally known as slimehead within the scientific community, seafood marketers had other ideas for this fish and gave the species a more appetizing name. The end result was a severely overfished species. Since orange roughy don't reach sexual maturity until at least 20 years old, they are very slow to recover. According to Asina, the extremely long lifespan and the late age at maturity imply that a decimated population may take a half-century or longer before it can recover. Beyond that, the orange roughy is also known to have higher mercury levels, which can be dangerous if consumed in large amounts. Number 11. Shark. Sharks are commonly found on fish you should never eat lists for several reasons. As bosses of the sea, they are very high on the food chain. That translates to higher mercury levels you should avoid in both foods and supplements. But apart from that, most shark species, which are slow to mature and don't have a lot of offspring, are severely depleted. This is partially due to a high demand for shark fins in Asian cuisine, as well as the fact that sharks are often caught accidentally by the thousands and discarded as waste by tuna and swordfish longline fishers. Number 12. Atlantic bluefin tuna. Although Atlantic bluefin tuna is a highly sought-after sushi ingredient, it's best to say no thanks to this popular fish. Often referred to as han maguro on sushi menus, this simply means bluefin tuna, which should be avoided at all costs. A better sushi choice would be katsuo skipjack tuna caught through Pacific trawler pole and line methods only. Atlantic bluefin tuna lands on the fish you should never eat land for a few reasons. First, it's been overfished to the point of near extinction. However, due to its high demand for sushi, fisheries managers are still allowing commercial fishing to target it. Sadly, bluefin tuna numbers are at just 2.6% of historic population levels. Aside from the obvious population collapse and extinction threat, this is also a large predatory fish that harbors higher levels of mercury. Number 13. Swordfish. Mercury is the main concern when it comes to avoiding swordfish. This large predatory fish contains elevated levels. In fact, the mercury in this fish is so high that the Environmental Defense Fund recommends women and children avoid it altogether. For men, the recommendation is to eat no more than 1 serving a month. Number 14. King mackerel. Mackerel is certainly packed with healthy omega-3s. But when it comes to certain types of mackerel, you could be getting more than you bargained for. That's certainly the case with king mackerel, as the Food and Drug Administration warns women and children to outright avoid it. You may want to avoid Spanish mackerel, too, which has also been shown to harbor elevated mercury levels. Luckily, Atlantic mackerel is high in omega-3s, low in mercury, and is rated a top choice in terms of health and sustainability. Number 15. Grouper. Grouper is on the list when it comes to fish you should never eat due to its moderately high mercury levels. This species is also highly vulnerable to overfishing. Grouper is also the common target of seafood fraud. In 2015, an investigation found that more than a third of 19 restaurants in Atlanta sold Pangasius, also known as Vietnamese catfish, as grouper. Testing also found that grouper for sale is actually often king mackerel or whitefin weakfish, a cheaper alternative. Between 1/5 to more than 1/3 of the halibut, grouper, cod and Chilean sea bass samples were mislabeled. So many fish you thought they were safe to eat, right? Now that you know which fish types to avoid, what will be the main fish you'll consume? Leave a comment down below. If you want to find out more about how you can be more healthy, please check out our playlist. If you like this video, please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, it really helps me a lot. Until next time, stay healthy.